Serious question to start us off. If you got an inheritance tomorrow, say you got $1 million from your parents, what's going to be the first thing that you do with it? And you cannot answer this like from a financial advisor's perspective. Just you've just got $1 million. What are you going to do?
If I had $1 million and if I can't give an advisor answer, I would probably buy one of those fancy Japanese toilets that I've seen. It's automatic. It opens up as soon as you walk in. It's got a seat warmer. It's just the Japanese are living in the future when it comes to that stuff. So I probably look at that and then just like a year of vacations.
A year of vacations.
Yep.
All right, man.
I can't give an advisor answer. So
Yeah, and I think that's how most people think, right? Upgrading their current life in these little ways, right? Japanese toilet, maybe nicer coffee machine. I don't know. But today we're going to talk about inheritances or surprise money, whether that's you got $10,000 suddenly or $10 million, and why so many people end up blowing it, right? Because Gen X is starting to receive trillions of dollars in wealth transfers over the next decade. And the question is, are we really ready for it?
I think it's a great question. We're living through the biggest wealth transfer that we've ever seen in history right now. And most people, when they think of an inheritance, they think it's just going to magically fix their finances. Once I get this money, I'll be able to figure everything out and not have to worry again. But from what we've seen, and I would imagine from what a lot of people have seen without a plan, oftentimes it's just going to create more problems or at least compound the problems that you already have. And really just cause more problems that it actually ends up solving.
Yeah, and the other thing is when it comes to receiving an inheritance, it's not just about the money. There's a lot of grief tied up in it. There's a lot of family dynamics, and suddenly you're making these huge decisions, but you're in the middle of this emotional fog while you're trying to do.
Yeah, exactly. So today we're going to be unpacking what you can actually do if you are receiving an inheritance, settlements, or even big bonuses, or even lottery winnings, if there's anyone listening. So that helps you build real wealth, gives you peace of mind rather than just becoming another missed opportunity and more of a detriment down the line.
Because if you're not intentional, it disappears. So what we're going to do is break down how to make sure a windfall or an inheritance actually improves your life long term. This is Money and Stuff. Thanks for tuning in.
So I think a lot of people assume that if you get a big chunk of money, whether it's from your parents, grandparents, or something like a settlement, lottery, whatever it is, that you're going to be set forever. But can you talk a little bit about why inheritances can be risky?
I think when you said that most people see it as being set forever, it's probably what most people think when they receive this like lump sum of money, wherever it comes from. But what actually happens is most people see it as bonus money instead of part of their bigger financial plan. So if someone did not have good money habits before, then this money is going to disappear faster than you think. And the studies actually back that up.
Yeah. In anticipation of this episode, I was reading an article that had a statistic saying that one third of people who receive an inheritance actually end up with a negative savings rate within 5 years. And I actually remember reading an article about lottery winners and how basically like there's a lot of negative statistics associated with winning the lottery, higher rate of bankruptcy, higher suicide rate, which seems kind of wild.
Yeah, it really is. And there's a few common reasons why. First, there's lifestyle inflation. So people will do things like upgrade their cars, their house, and their daily spending even goes up. And then the second thing is because an inheritance usually comes after a loss, there's some emotional spending attached to it as well. So people will spend to numb the grief or to honor the person. And then third, there's guilt spending sometimes, this feeling of I didn't earn this, so I should either give it away or I should do something big with it.
Yeah. And another thing that I know and I'm sure there's a lot of people who have either experienced it or seen it as well, is you feel like you need to fix everyone's problems with it, or people expect you to fix their problems. Suddenly cousins, siblings, or even friends just come out of the woodwork and start asking for help.
Exactly. And if you do not have boundaries, it's going to get messy fast. So you even see that with professional athletes, right? Being over accommodating, it can really drain you fast. But the reality is, inheritances are not magic. They're just money, and money without a plan just becomes another source of stress.
Yeah. And I think that's such an important perspective because otherwise it's easy to think, once I get that inheritance, I'm finally going to feel secure. I'll be able to take care of everything. But security doesn't come from a check. It comes from ultimately what you do with it.
When someone gets a sudden sum of money or bump in income, if they did not have good money habits before, they're not suddenly going to magically have them. They will treat that money the same, whether they have $20 or $25 million, unless they've actually consciously worked to make different decisions than what they used to.
Yeah. And I mean, at the end of the day, it's like you've always said, money amplifies who you already are. So if you're stressed about money now, if you have poor spending or saving habits now, more money is just going to amplify the stress and problems that come from it. I remember there was an SNL sketch with Adam Sandler where he's pretending to be a tour guide in Italy. And he's talking about how, like, if you're sad where you are and you come over here, you're still going to be the same sad you here in Italy. And I think that's exactly what happens with what we're talking.
Yeah, right. People are still the same people. And that's why so many athletes and celebrities and, people who get an inheritance, they go broke, right? They did not build the habits before the paycheck or that money arrived.
Yeah, exactly. So let's say somebody listening is going to be receiving an inheritance or they already have received an inheritance. Walk us through exactly what they should be doing.
So here's what almost no one tells you about getting an inheritance. If you get inheritance, your brain is in grief mode. It is not in logic mode. And that's why so many people rush to spend or give it away without thinking about taxes or future security. So step one is really simple, but it's very hard for people to do. You need to pause, right? Don't do anything for a while. Remember, you're probably grieving, your emotions are foggy, you're vulnerable to impulsive decisions and to advice from people who might not have your best interest in mind.
I mean, I know Lee talked about it before that when people are grieving, they really shouldn't be making any major financial decisions. I mean, there may be some things that you don't have the luxury of time to deal with, but by and large, you shouldn't be making those major decisions while you're processing grief. How long would you say people should try to wait before they step back into it?
I would say at least a month, ideally 2 or 3. The great thing is right now is high yield savings accounts and money markets are actually paying. So you can park it in a high yield savings or a money market for now, let it work for you while you give yourself time to just process what you've just been through.
Yeah, I mean, you've gone your whole life without this money. Waiting another month or two isn't going to hurt. So what comes next?
So next, figure out taxes. So most inheritances, they're not taxed directly to you. There's no federal inheritance tax, but retirement accounts, they're a different story. If it's an IRA, for example, you can't just cash it out without taxes. You might actually owe income tax on every single dollar that you take out.
Yeah, and there's no step up in basis for retirement accounts, right?
Yeah, that's right. So step up only applies to things like brokerage accounts, homes, any kind of asset that has a capital gain on it. But IRAs are pre-tax. So you want to understand the required minimum distributions if it's an inherited IRA. Otherwise, you could trigger some really big tax bills.
Yeah, I think that's really important for a lot of people to recognize or at least be aware of. Okay, so take the time to process the grief, look at your tax situation. What next?
Then after you've paused for a month or two and you've accounted for the taxes, you need to make a plan. So for people in their 40s and 50s, who are Generation X, what I usually recommend is number one, look for your high interest debt, right? Credit cards, personal loans that are eating into your cash flow and get those paid off. Two is top off your emergency fund, right? Make sure you have somewhere between 3 to 6 months of your expenses set aside somewhere that is easily accessible. And then number three, think about your biggest stress points. Is it college savings, catching up for retirement, paying off your mortgage? Maybe you need to support your aging parents, right? You need to allocate towards what brings you peace of mind and flexibility. So you need to start investing with intention. And then number four, set aside a portion, maybe just like 5 or 10% for something meaningful to honor the person that you lost, right? That could be a family trip. Maybe it's a piece of art that you can look at and remember them by. Or maybe you're just donating to a cause that they really cared about.
Yeah, I think that last one is especially important. Not necessarily something that many people think about because I do think a lot of people feel guilty spending that inheritance money on themselves, but honoring that person's legacy is really a beautiful use of that money. And great, like you said, a great way to honor them. I know for my mom, a big family, bunch of siblings, when her parents passed away, they all used part of the inheritance to pay for a trip down to the Caribbean where they'd always go for family trips to bring everybody down and like have a celebration of their life.
Yeah, it's about balance.
All right. So let's do some quick fire inheritance scenarios. And I want to get your take on each of them. So first, you receive $25,000 from a grandparent.
Yeah. So just like I said before, pause first, then probably set aside $2,500 for something meaningful to remember them by. Again, pay off any credit card debt you have, put the rest into emergency savings or invest it towards something specific. Maybe think about starting a Roth IRA if you qualify.
Yeah, that's a good idea. I mean, that could really set up someone's retirement in a small but powerful way. What about $250,000 that you receive from your parents?
If I asked 100 people, if you received $250,000 tomorrow, would you know exactly what to do with it? Probably 99% of them won't, right? They'll think about things like paying off a car or remodeling a kitchen. Then they'll take a vacation. And then a year later, it's like it never happened. The opportunity to change their life is just gone. The smartest move is to treat the inheritance like a part of your bigger plan, right? Pay off high interest debt, top off your emergency savings, invest for long-term goals, and yeah, set something aside meaningful to remember your loved one by, right? Same principle as getting $2,500 or $25,000.
And setting that money aside, that could be something like going on vacation somewhere that they love to visit, or even just starting a scholarship fund in their name. Something that's just going to be memorable and honor them, like we talked about earlier.
Yeah.
What about $1 million that you're going to receive, and now we're including a house?
Getting $1 million inheritance, things are going to start to get complex. So first, you need to get a team in place. You need a financial advisor, you need an accountant, you need an estate attorney. So figure out if you want to keep the house or if you want to sell it. What does keeping it mean for your cash flow and for your taxes? What are your broader goals, right? Don't just rush into decisions because your family emotions can cloud your judgment.
Yeah. And unfortunately, oftentimes there's a sibling tension too, especially if there's multiple heirs to that inheritance.
Yeah, that's really why you need professionals guiding you through the conversation.
What would you say is the biggest mistake that people make with inheritances like that?
That they spend it all thinking that they're never going to run out, right? They forget about how big taxes and lifestyle inflation can be, or they tell everyone and then they end up fending off endless asks for money. So if you're listening, you really need to ask yourself, if I received an inheritance tomorrow, would I know what to do with it? Do I have the habits in place now to handle it wisely? Would I treat it like bonus money or part of my bigger financial plan? Do I know how I'd honor the person who left it to me? And have I had a conversation with my parents before they pass about what their wishes are for what they leave behind?
Yeah. And I think that last one's huge because inheritances aren't just about money. There's family stories, values, dreams that they're also being passed down.
Yeah, they really are. Another thing is what we're seeing more and more is that inheritances are largely made up of IRAs or 401k money. And you want to know what the biggest mistake people make with those inherited IRAs? They cash it out without understanding the tax bomb that they've triggered, right? An inherited IRA, it's going to be taxed as income. So cashing out tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars from an IRA could push you into the highest tax brackets for the year. So instead, again, you need that team. You need to talk to an advisor about stretching distributions over 10 years. So that way you can spread out taxes and keep more of what you inherit. So the thing about getting an inheritance is they feel like it could change everything, and they can, but only if you handle them right. Otherwise, you end up right back where you started and sometimes even worse off.
Yeah. And typically with a fancier car payment and a lot more stress.
That's right. The biggest wealth transfer in history is happening right now. Gen X is inheriting trillions. Whether it changes your life for the better or for the worse, it's really going to depend on what you do next.
Yeah. Because ultimately a windfall without a plan just becomes another missed opportunity.
Yeah. Here's the truth about inheritances that no one really wants to hear. If you don't have good money habits before you receive an inheritance, it's not going to magically fix your life. It's just going to amplify your current patterns and problems. And that's why the real secret to using an inheritance well is building healthy financial habits now. So when that money does come, you're ready to use it to create freedom, flexibility, and peace of mind.
Yeah, that's well said. And if anybody's listening and this hit home for you, if you have a friend or family member who's navigating an inheritance right now, share this with them. If they give it a listen, I guarantee they'll thank you later.
All right, guys, we really appreciate you tuning in. If you made it this far, please hit like, please hit subscribe. If you guys have anything you want us to talk about, as always, you can email Conor, cshepard at Foundation Wealth Partners, and we will talk about it. Really appreciate you guys. See you next time.